This is TWIS. This Week in Science, episode number 607, recorded on Wednesday, February 22nd, 2017. Goldilocks and the 7 Belgian monks. I'm going to say that over again. There was some loud noise there. Goldilocks and the 7 Belgian monks. Hey everybody, I am Dr. Kiki, and tonight we are going to fill your heads with new hair cells, cute lemurs, and a bunch of penguins. But first...
Disclaimer. Just this week in a solar system not so far away, as far as other solar systems go, 7 planets, rocky in nature and all within the zone of habitability, sparked the imagination of NASA. Imagine a solar system so tightly wound that from the surface of any planet, you can see the others with the naked eye. So close that if it were ours, we could colonize them all, as they may all be wet with water. Yes, an astronomer's wet dream, an uncontained cornucopia of science fiction scenarios, and what better way to begin the day than with the knowledge that there are 7 more planets in our galaxy that may hold the potential for life to flourish. But before you pack your bags and hitch your wagon to this star, there are a few things you ought to be prepared for upon arrival. All this and more on This Week in Science, coming up next.
I've got the kind of mind that can't get enough. I want to learn everything. I want to fill it all up with new discoveries that happen every day of the week. There's only one place to go to find the knowledge I seek. I want to know what's happening. What's happening? What's happening this week in science? What's happening? What's happening? What's happening this week in science?
Good science to you, Kiki and Blair.
And a good science to you, Justin, Blair, and everyone out there. Welcome to another episode of This Week in Science. So thrilled to be here this week. Really, so much science going on yet again, a cornucopia, and a big announcement today, which Justin talked a bit about in the disclaimer, and we will be getting to later in the show. But you guys ready for a great show today?
Mm-hmm.
All right, then. Today on the show, we have lots of science news. We have an interview about penguin noses of sorts. And I have some new stories about healing hearing, how gut bacteria need nerves, and some new exoplanets. Justin, what did you bring?
I've got unlocking your creativity by using your brain, and linguists tackle early American colonization.
And Blair, what is the animal corner holding in store for us?
I have new technologies that will save the wilderness and toxoplasmosis.
Oh, I love to talk. Good talk. There's nothing came across my scanner.
Yeah. Well, you have worked at zoos with, lots of cats and animals. I'm not really surprised that you've got toxo.
So many cats and frogs and carrots and ferrets and parrots.
You've taken care of carrots?
And parrots and ferrets, yes.
All right. Okay, everybody. You ready for it? I'm ready for it. First up, before we go into the science stories, we are going to speak with our guest. We have an interview today. Like I said, our interview is with Dr. Gregory Cunningham. He's an associate professor at St. John's Fisher College, where he studies behavior ecology and physiology of birds. Much of his research is focused on how and what birds smell, specifically Antarctic seabirds who have to locate food over vast stretches of open ocean. But in 2015, it's been there before, but in 2015, he went to live with penguins for a month, and he's here to talk with us about that, about what he found, what he's been publishing about it, and basically what it was like out there. Greg, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
It is wonderful to have you here. And as we get started, I just want to let our listening audience know, because the YouTube audience, the live audience right now, are well aware that you've got a bright colored beard and shock of hair, very rock starish.
I'd like to say that maybe I'm in breeding plumage right now.
We are coming into spring breeding season. Yes.
Exactly.
That would make sense. All right. Well, it's very fancy. So, okay. Penguins, Antarctica. Wow. What was it like going to Antarctica to study penguins?
This was my third time down there. I did 2 years or 2 field seasons down there for part of my dissertation. And the last time I had been down there was 2012. So it was pretty exciting to go back because a lot of it was trying to see how the actual experience lived up to my memories of it, because it's a pretty impactful space. It's kind of hard to let go of it. So, for this particular research trip, you start off on Reunion Island, which is off the coast of Madagascar. You jump on a 360-foot long research vessel and steam south for about 8 or 10 days, give or take, to get down to the island. So it's a great way to start a research trip, starting in the tropics before heading down to the Antarctic.
Do you get seasick?
Not at all.
Oh, that's good.
No, there are certainly some people who, the moment the boat pulls out, they turn, like, literally the opposite of this beard. They turn green, and then they look miserable pretty much for the entire time. And on the boat, on the boat ride back, we were.
On the boat ride back.
You're still alive with us.
Okay.
Did something happen? What's going on?
So I've been on fishing trips before, where leaving the Berkeley Marina before where we headed out past the Golden Gate Bridge to go do a little bit of deep sea fishing, and like within 100 yards of leaving the dock, there were people who were laid out.
Yeah,
and the boat doesn't turn around, and like, okay, we'll start over. We'll try tomorrow when your Dramamine really kicks in. And then, like, the whole day, they were laid out, and there was nothing they could do. Everybody else was enjoying the trip, having fun, fishing, what have you, and they just had a miserable experience the whole time. So I can imagine if you know it's for the whole day, that's gotta be terrible. But if it's you're out for 8 to 10 days, oh boy, that's misery. That's got to be just pure misery.
Yeah. So fortunately for me, that doesn't happen. I'm just totally fine the entire time. I actually like it better when it's rocky.
Yeah. And so 8 to 10 days, you travel from where you are on the east coast of the United States, and then travel to Madagascar in the tropics, 8 to 10 days by steamer boat down to Kerguelen Island.
Yep.
And that's your final destination. Can you describe the island for us? Because I think when people think of the Antarctic, they're just thinking vast stretches of ice.
Sure. It's Kerguelen is a volcanic island, and so I'm only there during their summertime, and so it's grass. Actually, there's a lot of grass there, and there is snow on the top of the mountains and such, but it's always windy, and that sometimes it can be strong enough to knock you over. The wind can be so strong, which is really difficult to do olfactory experiments in those sorts of windy conditions.
Yeah.
And while we're still a little bit on the logistics of it, I spent a few weeks in Greenland once. And I picture that it's probably a similar setup because there is no plumbing, for instance. So how is that portion of the people's being there and having to function like human beings, how is that dealt with?
Well, the actual life on the research base is quite comfortable. There is electricity, there's plumbing, there's There's street lamps. There's actually a radio station that they have there that I suspect is just someone with an MP3 player just goes in the morning and plugs it in and lets it go all day long. But it actually feels remarkably normal when you're on the base. As of now, there's actually very slow internet that you can get, and so it's comfortable.
Nice.
It certainly feels different, but it's comfortable.
I think that's fantastic. It's just so neat to go to such a distant place. And so you're there in the summertime. The winds are blowing. It's not a balmy place. It's got to be still a little bit chilly down that far south. And so tell us about how do you get to your research spot, and then what were you doing once you got there?
Sorry, the lag just caught me there for a second. So to get to the station where the penguins were, it's about an 8-hour walk from the main base to the penguin beach, and your supplies are dropped off, so you don't have to carry out a month's worth of gear along with you. But it's an interesting walk because you get to this. They drop you off in a car. And there's no roads. You just sort of walk in one direction, and you keep this one mountain on the right-hand side, you keep another mountain on the left-hand side, and you just sort of walk. And there are these really big lakes. Well, maybe not that big, but big enough that they're maybe 10 minutes to walk around. And so you just sort of repeatedly get up to these lakes, and you get to the edge, and you look to the right, and you look to the left, and you decide which way is quicker or shorter. And then you walk around the lake and you get to the other side. And then sometimes you end up walking through bogs and you submerge up to your shins. And then sometimes you're just walking on volcanic rock. And then sometimes on mossy surfaces. And then eventually you get to the edge of the ocean and you turn left and you just keep walking until you get to the colony, essentially.
Can you tell us, when you get to the colony of these birds, how big is it? How big is it? What's your first reaction to coming across this large group of animals?
So the location of the Ratmanoff colony it's around a corner. So it's really great because you're sort of walking up the beach, and if you haven't been there in 10 years, like I had been, you sort of forget exactly where you are. But so you come around this corner, and it just is sort of laying out in front of you. The colony I was with was about 120,000 penguins, and so
it's a small town.
Living in Rochester, New York, and there's a lot of Buffalo Bills fans here. I usually like to tell people, if you've ever been to a Buffalo Bills game, you imagine Ralph Wilson Stadium and then double it, because that's about the number of penguins that are on the beach with you.
Wow.
And so when you walk out of the cabin, the number of birds, like you just are sort of, what the picture you're showing right now, you can just sort of constantly see that for about a good 10 or 15 minute walk. It's just nonstop penguins on your left-hand side.
And are they hesitant about there being humans around, or they just don't even care?
The chicks are a lot more curious than the adults. So most of the work I did on this most recent trip was with king penguins, and the chicks, if you stop, they'll walk up to you and check you out. The adults will definitely walk away from you, but usually if you just sort of sit down on the beach, they'll come and check you out. It's pretty fun when you just sort of take that pause and.
Absolutely. I'm just imagining coming across all these animals, and I remember talking with you about it after you had gone. I think your first or second time it was probably your first time out, and how the first time you had come across all the birds, it was the smell that was also not just visually, but the smell of the animals was overpowering.
Sure, you can smell the colony often before you hear it and before you see it. and I remember like because our cabin was really close to the southern edge of the colony, and the winds were coming from the north, and so there were times where someone would come like if you'd been sleeping and someone would come into the hut and then open the door and you'd get like a waft of the colony in through the door and such. So yeah, it certainly was. It's a pretty overpowering smell, which is good probably for the penguins.
Good for the penguins, but now your job is to then see how well their sense of smell is, and it would seem like this was like be the first obstacle, which is whatever sense of smell you're trying to judge has to be something that's overcoming this scent that's everywhere.
Well, yes and no, right? Because for us, it smells one way, but we don't really know what it smells like to a penguin, right? So we sort of feel that it's overpowering and just sort of feel like you're hit by a wall of penguin smell. But to them, it might smell very different, and they may be able to tease apart some of those differences.
So once you were there and you were looking at this massive amount of penguins, 120,000 penguins, you've got this, the human sense of smell that you're dealing with. And how do you go about trying to find out what they can smell and how they smell? How did you start your experimenting?
So I've done work with African penguins before and had some rough ideas, but no one has ever done anything with king penguins before. So the first couple of days I just got on the beach and just walked around and looked at them and thought about them and just tried to get to know the species sort of in just straight up just seeing how they moved, where they walked, what they did kind of thing. And then I started to try to come up with experiments, and you have to submit your ideas beforehand. So I had some rough ideas about what I was going to do. And so the first thing I tried to do was I put an odor in a space where the penguins seem to walk a lot, and just thought if I had an interesting odor out there, maybe, and then I video recorded their responses, and maybe they would check out the smell, or if I could record their behaviors, maybe they would walk slower or walk more quickly or things like that through those areas. And so I tried that for like 3 days, and that experiment didn't work at all. It was impossible to track their movements and such. There was just too many birds.
I can imagine. Yeah.
So then the next idea I had was they actually had a remote control car in the hut that they were using, because a lot of the penguins they had like chipped, and so they could put a recorder or a recording unit on the remote control car, and they could drive it around, and then they could use that to ID all the penguins in the area. And so I thought, well, I wonder what would happen if I just put a GoPro camera on the remote control car and drove the remote control car sort of into the edge of the colony to see what happens. And so I did that for a few afternoons of trying to do that. And I learned that penguins do not like remote control cars. That was probably the most valuable thing that came out of that, which was a shame, because I had all these great visions of interviews of me and my remote control car experiments, but that just didn't work. So
in this video that we're seeing, they do not seem very plussed.
No,
by the present.
And like if you're looking at this video, it looks like I'm driving like a jerk, but in fact, it's really difficult because there's rocks and you're trying to move around everything. So you're just trying to get the car in there as quickly as you can with as minimal disturbance as possible.
It seems like skuas, though, are actually quite attracted to the remote control vehicle.
Yeah, no, that skua, he's going to pick at that quite a lot. There he goes.
Oh, what a cutie.
Funny. All right.
So that was about the first 9 days of being on the beach. And I was only there for 30 days. And I was getting really frustrated because everything I was trying to do wasn't working. And so if you recall, I have that one technique that I do where if you take a baby bird that's right out of the egg and you hold a light bulb up to it, it'll fall asleep and then you can puff smells onto it. And I was sitting in the kitchen one afternoon and I was like, I'm really upset that I wasn't here when the chicks just hatch, because that experimental technique only works when they're like 2 days old.
And you
3
could have
days
just
old.
taken babies and kind of
Yeah.
gotten them to go to sleep, put them by a warm light, make them go to sleep, and then puff little bits of air and odor over their faces and see if they shake their head, right?
Yeah, right. And so I was in the kitchen lamenting over the timing of it, and I looked out the window and I said, well, hold on, right now I can look out the window and I can see 30 or 40 adult birds sleeping naturally on the beach right now. So I was like, I wonder what would happen if I snuck up behind these birds with a scented stick and held it beneath their beak while they were asleep. And I went out and started trying to do that. I know it's ridiculous, but it worked. It worked really well.
Nice.
And I was able to test them with a variety of odors that they were responsive to. So it looks like, I think you're showing that video right now of
you with the GoPro strapped to you.
So how does
how
does someone sneak up on a sleeping penguin?
Actually, he's doing a great job. I'm watching the video right now, and then I can now pick out a sleeping penguin, which I thought that they were grooming from a distance.
Yeah, the one penguin's actually about to fall down.
Over.
Do penguins fall over when they sleep?
No, they stand.
They stand. I'm just wondering if they do fall over.
No, they fall over when you kind of approach them too quickly. But this guy is about to raise his head, and that's science, ladies and gentlemen, right there.
Oh.
So what we saw in the video is you approaching a sleeping penguin. The penguin is standing on the beach with its head slumped over toward its wing.
Mhm.
And you approach it with a stick with some odor tacked onto the end of the stick. Put the wave the stick or hold the stick under its nose. And then if the bird detects the odor, they're more likely to wake up or shake their heads or respond in some physical way.
Yeah, so the experiment was done. I actually walked around with cotton battened up my nose, so I didn't know the identity of the smell that I was testing them with. Yeah.
That's a good control. All right.
So you would do I had this sort of scale in my head that, 0 was no response, 3 was them waking up, and then 1 and 2 were somewhere in between kind of thing. And so I tested them with a bunch of different odors. The first odor I tested them with was dimethyl sulfide, the odor associated with algae that a lot of marine predators use to find prey over the ocean. And that one, the fact that they were responsive to that wasn't that surprising, because I've published on African penguins that have done that, or that are sensitive to that. We know that lots of other seabirds are sensitive to dimethyl sulfide. So that experiment was sort of I expected them to respond to DMS, and sure enough, they did. So once I used the sleeping technique with DMS and knew that it worked, I tried the next round of experiments where I tested them with the scent of feathers and the scent of feces. And so I had to wait on the beach for a penguin to take a poop, and then once a penguin took a nice fresh poop, I'd walk over to with a stick and roll some duct tape with the sticky side out in the poop, and then snuck up on the penguins with the scent of poop. And they responded to poop, and they responded also to the scent of feathers as well.
But we don't know exactly what it would be in the poop, in the feces, that they would necessarily be responding to. It's just they're responding to something in it.
Yeah.
So this is I got an experiment now. Are you going back?
Okay.
So one of the things that's always boggled me about penguins, and I don't know if these penguins have the same behavior, or if it's a different type of penguin, is that the mating couple, as they're raising an egg, right? They go out in shifts to go and forage. And then they go out, and then they come back to this city of 110,000, to me, identical looking, sounding, smelling penguins. And they find, after a bit of searching, they find their mate, they share the food, and then the other one goes out and hunts while the one that came back stays with it. Has anybody done this where they've taken the poo surrounding, because they stay in one kind of spot, don't they, when they're when they're or in a relatively small area when they're rearing and waiting for the other to come back. If you took that poop and moved it somewhere else, would the returning one go to the sound of the other one, call in response, or would they go back to the scent of the poop that came from their mate?
Yeah, so I suspect that they're probably using multiple layers of sensory cues to find each other. Because with king penguins, we know, for example, that they use vocalizations to find each other on the beach. But the problem is that they're only able to hear each other's voice from about 8 to 10 meters because everyone's vocalizing. And so there's just a lot of signal to noise kind of problems going on there. And so one of the things that we think they might be doing is using maybe the smells of the penguins in the area.
Which you can smell before you've even seen or heard them.
Right, yeah. The smell would travel further than the acoustic cue. So maybe you're using smell to get close to them, and then you start to sing, and then their chicks their chicks would hear you and such.
Yeah.
But I don't really want to be the guy that has to transport poop up and down that beach. So
no, that's science. You've already been doing it. That's what you got poo on a stick.
Well,
you're like doing
true,
an Eddie Murphy routine.
I'd have to be a wheelbarrow of poop, I suspect.
Yeah, you'd have to be transporting a bunch of quadrants. You have to mark out the beach in quadrants, collect it, and redistribute it. Definitely would need a wheelbarrow for that. So, in figuring out what the birds are responding to, now we know that the dimethyl sulfide is important, but when the adults come back and feed the chicks when they're young, they're probably gathering information from that odor or the smell of the fish on the adult as they're regurgitating that meal up for the young. And so there's probably some learning happening there. But would they be, they hunt under the water most of the time. They're not flying out over open ocean like other seabirds like skuas and petrels and many others. So do you think there would be a difference based on how they hunt?
So I certainly think that on some levels, what they need to do is similar to other seabirds because they, using DMS being a surface cue is sort of giving us glimpses into what's going on under the ocean. So it doesn't really matter whether you're hunting fish or krill or squids, right? You just need to be able to find those areas. And then probably what they're doing is switching over to visual cues when they actually start to dive. But there's also, you mentioned the talk about the fish scent. Some work when I tried this with African penguins when I was there years ago, and they seem to be completely unresponsive to the scent of fish. And some other South African researchers a few years after I did my work there went out at sea and just deployed some DMS at sea, and the penguins recruited. But then they also tried recruiting using cod liver oil, and the penguins didn't recruit at all to cod liver oil, right? Because if these birds are taking their prey at depth, they actually probably don't really know, other than that brief period where they're getting fed by their parents, they don't probably ever actually experience what their food actually smells like.
Right.
So the fish scent itself might not be that meaningful to a penguin.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah, and the DMS, since it is like a plume up above, evaporating from the krill up into the air above the ocean, and if the birds are gathering that information, they're going to be tuning in on the smell of the krill, which is indicative of fish that might be under the water eating the krill.
And what is DMS?
Dimethyl sulfide.
But why is that? How is that connected to?
Dimethyl sulfide is an odor that's associated with algae that is released by algae, particularly when they're being preyed upon by zooplankton.
Oh, gotcha.
And so where there's lots of zooplankton, there's going to be lots of fish and other things eating the zooplankton, and it's all a big cascade.
Yeah.
And if you've seen the movie Happy Feet, you see what happens on top of and below the water in this.
Tap dancing?
No, it wasn't Happy Feet.
Tap dancing.
Yeah.
They didn't do any tap dancing.
Yeah.
Not during the tap dancing
with the
scene.
ghetto blaster and play In Your Eyes, and there was no response at all.
Aww.
So, okay, penguins don't start dancing to the ghetto blaster in Antarctica. Darn movies, making things up again.
Yeah, who knew? Not accurate.
So we've talked a lot. I mean, Greg and I went to graduate school together. So this is how I originally know Greg and know of his work, and his graduate advisor, Gabrielle Nevitt, working on dimethyl sulfide and how these seabirds smell and when they learn what they do about the odor of the food sources they're going to eat later in their lives. But how have you have you been finding out anything new and exciting about other bird species? You've looked at the king penguins, the African penguins, graduate work you did petrels. Is there any other avian olfaction we need to know about that you've been working on?
So I think part of St. John Fisher College is a small teaching focused school. And so we don't have any graduate students or anything like that. And so it's kind of changed the way that I've been, my productivity in terms of doing research and such. So, I've been doing a lot of chicken research lately, actually. One of the things we're trying to do right now is do aromatherapy for chickens to see if we can manipulate corticosterone levels with a certain particular scent. So we're working on that right now. Because students can work with chickens quite easily, and they don't have to come down to Antarctica and things like that. So,
right.
So we've been doing a lot of stuff like that.
That's neat. And if you could calm chickens down, then happier eggs.
Exactly. Right? Happier eggs, maybe bigger eggs also.
Oh.
And also, what I'm really interested in for it is that, since reproductive hormones are suppressed by corticosterone and such, that maybe if we could use this odor in captivity and puff it out, then maybe we could manipulate the reproduction productivity of birds in captivity, and then we could have more baby birds being born and all that kind of stuff. And for species in peril, that could be really helpful for them.
Yeah. Could be useful in a zoo setting too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Just have sort of, when you go into the bathroom and there's like one of those annoying puffy things that makes the bathroom smell nice.
Yes.
Imagine one of those, but it makes the birds less stressed, and then they want to mate.
Oh my goodness.
It's better than very white. I love it.
Nothing makes me want to mate more than the scent of a urinal cake.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's and in this case, it might be that the scent of 120,000 penguins is what calms them down.
Oh, in that case, yeah.
Yeah. So that's interesting. I think about the zoo here in San Francisco. It's a really, really successful Magellanic penguin colony, and it's also the largest. And I'm wondering if that's related, if it's because there's 54 penguins pooping on that island all day, every day, that in terms of the olfactory input, it makes them feel calm because there's more of them.
Yeah, it could be, right? There could just be some sort of amount that they need to have, I don't want to say confidence, but yeah, there's enough odor input that it makes them, safe in numbers. Exactly.
Yeah. Fascinating.
I'll have to come out and find out.
Yeah.
And we've talked a little bit about it on this show, but olfaction in general for birds, this is a relatively new area of study, like only several decades.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've been told birds don't have a sense of smell at all.
Yeah, I remember when I was in my undergrad class in ornithology that my professor was like, birds don't have a sense of smell, we move on, kind of such. And when I started my PhD in 1999, there was really only a few of us who were doing it. But since then, it's a lot more people are doing this kind of research, which is cool because it's really starting to be flushed out with a variety of studies. So.
Yeah, I was hearing something recently that the dodo bird actually probably had a pretty decent sense of smell.
I did not read that.
And I think there was another study as well that more recently that talking about kiwi olfaction. They probably have a really interesting sense of smell with their long proboscis-like beak.
About what? Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Oh, the kiwi.
Oh yeah, no, there's definitely been some work with kiwis that shows that they have the largest olfactory bulbs of any bird, so at least they have the hardware to do it. And there's been a very few studies that are showing that kiwis can smell.
Yeah, and just a couple weeks ago, we did that study on birds of prey and using peppermint as a cue to food to then engineer enrichment.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was fascinating. Peppermint.
I should talk to you about that because I'm kind of curious about that.
Yeah, it's in our show notes, and I will send it to you.
I'll track it down.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's some really interesting work, and I think the idea that birds are they are very visual, and like you made the joke about your breeding plumage colors. That's the way we think of birds, is making breeding calls and singing to each other and showing off their beautiful plumage in the springtime. But there are 4 seasons to a year. Birds are not always squawking loudly and showing off their feathers. They are immersed in their environment. And so being able to understand all of the senses that a bird is using to do that, I think it's...
Sure. I think that's one of the great part about where we're at with sort of understanding bird behavior, is that we're starting to finally understand that it's going to be multiple senses all working together, because it's what we do too, right? We don't rely on just one sense, and we're not even that like sensey of a species. So we would expect that it's a layered sort of approach that these animals are using to be successful.
Yeah. Well, this is so fantastic, the work that you're doing. I hope you do go back to Antarctica with a wheelbarrow.
Right now I'm trying to get down to Patagonia, so that might be the next project, but Antarctica would be fine too.
Yeah.
If you're looking for a Blair to help you study penguins, you just let me know.
Okay, would you mind registering as a student at my college so I can get myself, so I can say I'm taking a student along with me? Because that's the kind of stuff
that can be arranged for sure.
Just take a few more classes, continuing education credits.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. No problem.
What is next on your list? What are you working? I mean, you're working on chickens. You've been doing the penguin olfaction. What's in Patagonia? Where are you going? Can you talk about it?
Yeah, I mean, other than the chicken work right now, it's just sort of a bunch of stuff that's floating around in my mind, but nothing that's really too concrete right now. I sort of need to lock down my next ideas.
Awesome. And if there's one thing that you want people to take home about your studies on these penguins, what would it be?
I guess that for me, like obviously, bird olfaction is really cool, but one of the things I like to give this talk, I've done this talk a lot in grade schools and high schools and such, is that I think people get so bogged down with this idea that, like we have $10,000, $20,000, $100,000 pieces of equipment out there for doing these various experiments. And it's nice to be reminded that sometimes science can be as easy as putting a smelly thing on the end of a stick and sneaking up on an animal, right? That's still very valuable science. And science doesn't have to be expensive, and it doesn't have to be complicated. It can be, if young children could do this sort of experiment. And I think that's sort of nice to be reminded that science can be very approachable, and it doesn't have to be these really complicated methodologies that you don't really understand.
That's great. And if people do want to find you online and connect with your research, where can they do that?
So I'm at St. John Fisher College in Rochester, New York. And if you do a search for Greg Cunningham at St. John Fisher College, then you can track me down.
Fantastic. And I hear that you...
Right there. That's a horrible picture, though. Oh, my God. No red beard on that one.
Oh, wait. Would you prefer this one?
That's the better one.
We're now looking at a picture, not a university or a college profile picture. This is from Kerguelen Islands with the cotton balls up your nose.
Yeah, that's why I had no idea the odor that I was what I was testing the birds with.
This
That's
isn't
the picture of good science. That's what that is.
This
Yeah,
is
it's-
science in action.
Yeah.
Doing it blind, but anosmic, I guess, would be the approach.
Yeah, if you're working on odors and you want to control for that, you want to make sure that everyone's fairly approached. You got to make sure that you don't know what you're smelling.
I do have one last follow-up question.
All right.
Okay.
How many showers to get rid of the penguin poop smell when you got home?
Well, so on the island or on the beach with the penguins, there wasn't not actually a shower. So I went
So it's not
30
the
days
penguins.
without a shower.
It's
So
not the
that's my own
penguins.
personal record.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This would be
Um,
Blair's living hell.
You know
Okay.
what? No.
Blair just canceled her subscription to the
That's right. You
Antarctic.
still
No,
wanna come? You
I'd
still,
do
you
it.
said
I'd do it for the penguins. I would.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So, so on the last day, you sort of walk back that 7 or 8 hours, and it was actually a really warm day the day we walked back too. And so I took 3 showers the afternoon I got back to the main base when I could finally take a shower again. So that's how many showers. It takes 3
showers.
apparently to wipe off the smell.
Yeah, I think that's minimum. I think that's right on par with what I would have thought.
All right. Greg, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you guys. That was a lot of fun.
It's wonderful to hear about your time there and the work that you've been doing. It's just really interesting.
Great.
Thanks so much. Have a
Thank
wonderful have a wonderful evening. You're welcome to join us for the rest of the show if you like, but I also understand it's late where you are. So
Yeah, I think I'm gonna close it out because I got to get up early for class. So thank you very much for the opportunity to chat with y'all.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Bye.
All right. Good night.
have a great night.
Ciao.
Ciao. All right,
Gotcha.
everybody. This is This Week in Science. That was a fantastic interview. Seriously, science. It can be as simple as poop on a stick.
On a stick.
That's right. It's great. We are going to take a very short break right now. And when we come back, we will discuss science news stories from the last week that caught our attention. So you don't want to miss that because we've talked about the penguins, but we still have to talk about planets, and we have to talk about brains, and we have to talk about lemurs. There's so much more coming. Don't miss it. Stay tuned.
Can you hear me right now?
I can.
So I'm sorry. I was getting an echo, like a 20-second delay the entire time. So I hope that was okay because I had to like listen to. Well, it sounded okay.
Oh, it did sound okay. That was wow. You had a delay the whole time. That was a little. There was the part in the beginning where it was a bit off, and then
Yeah, it never stopped for me. The whole time we were interviewing, I was having to like hear 2 voice. I was talking, and it's still doing it actually. So wow. Okay, I'm glad it was good.
I'm sorry about that. That's
okay.
yeah.
I was just it was a remarkable amount of concentration required to
It's probably just the right amount of time to make it incredibly hard to concentrate on what you're saying. Yeah. I'm sorry about that.
No, that's fine. Well, I'm going to hang up now, and you guys have a
Okay.
good rest of your show. And thanks again.
You too. Thank you so much.
Okay. Ciao.
Bye. That's terrible. Okay. Time for the break stuff. I don't know what I'm going to say right now. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to TWIS. It's really wonderful to have you as part of our listening audience, part of our viewing audience. Thank you so much for joining us. And if you would like to find us more often, like during the week, you can head on over to TWIS.org. TWIS.org is where you can find all things TWIS related, or at least most things TWIS related. You have new episodes that for the podcast that are put there with show notes every week, so you can find our show notes. Additionally, if you are interested in finding merchandise, if you would like some TWIS stuff, swag. Somebody complained about me using the word swag once. said that our stuff was more quality than swag. So I appreciate that. I was using it as a funny word. But anyway, we've got lots of stuff. TWIS logo emblazoned all over t-shirts, mouse pads, stamps, hats, mugs, all sorts of things. You can peruse our selection of wonderful TWISy items. We also have items that are covered in artwork from Blair's Animal Corner calendars. And so we've got lumbar pillows. You can have a mammoth lumbar pillow. The art hand-created, lovingly, sciencingly by Blair. So head to twis.org and click on that Zazzle store link if you are interested in checking that stuff out. Part of the proceeds do go to supporting TWIS. And so by purchasing those items, you support us in a couple of ways, telling people about TWIS because you're wearing the TWIS stuff, and also financially because the proceeds do come back to us. If you would like to just directly support us, we take donations through PayPal. You can click on a donate button that's on the right sidebar of the main page. Just head right on down. It says donate to TWIS, support TWIS, donate, make a donation, click, and it'll take you through a nice and easy PayPal subscription or a PayPal donation form that if you like PayPal and it works for you, that would be fantastic. You will be helping to produce TWIS. Seriously, all the funds that we get from you guys goes towards actually making this show happen. So it helps us come up with new equipment when we need to buy new equipment, when something breaks, when the light bulbs burn out and we need to put new light bulbs in the lights, new microphones every once in a while, mic stands. These things do cost money. And so your support helps us keep the little things together so that we can keep it going. Additionally, you can support us by clicking on the Patreon link that is on our page. Click on the Patreon link on twis.org, and it'll take you right to the main page of our Patreon account where you can click Become a Patron, and you can become a patron on Patreon at various levels and become kind of part of the Patreon community. For one of the levels, the $10 or more per episode, you can actually be part of a special Google Hangout once a month. And so I think we're going to be doing our Google Hangout for people tomorrow afternoon. And then I'm going to set another one in the morning on Friday for people who are across the pond or across a couple of ponds and are in a very different time zone from just the East Coast. But anyway, that's one of the neat things. You can also, at the $15 episode, Blair will hand draw you a picture. You can have one of the original artworks of Blair. It's pretty exciting
There's
stuff.
still a few available from the 2017 calendar.
Awesome. And finally, if you are unable to afford any of our merchandise or even a couple of dollars a month through Patreon or PayPal, just telling people about TWIS does so much. By tweeting, by Snapchatting, by Instagramming, by Facebooking, by putting the word out that you are listening to TWIS, that you like TWIS, that, hey, this segment of the show was awesome. You should check out this story. You can go to the direct link in our YouTube show notes and go to the exact time code and send that link out for people. And there's so many different ways, but really helping to get the word out is such a huge help right now to get more people enjoying TWIS and enjoying what we have to offer. Whatever you are able to do, whatever your ability, we really could not do this without you. Thank you for your support.
Optimus 6 months from now, you folks will not be missed.
What is the moral that we all must learn? Especially those of us with money to burn. Before your eyes widen at the book on the shelf, think. Is he helping you? Or is he helping himself? You can't believe what a skeptic I am.
And we're back with more This Week in Science. What you got, Kiki?
I am back. Well, I was going to mention that song coming out of the song that we just heard is by George Hrab, and he has a podcast, the Geologic Podcast. And I think he had somewhere close to 500 episodes recently. So if you haven't heard of George Hrab, he's a skeptic, has a great podcast, and might be fun to check out as well. What story am I going to jump into right now? How about, the most boring story of the day that nobody knows anything about? Trappist-1. Trappist-1. What is Trappist-1? Trappist-1 is a star. It's a trap. It's a tarp. Yeah, it's a star. It is. It is a star. Trappist-1 is a red dwarf star. And this star has, it turns out, been on that NASA has had its eyes on Trappist-1. Now, the findings that were announced today was that this single star system, this is not a multiple star system, not double stars or anything, but this single star, this red dwarf that's not too hot, has 7, not 6, not 8, 7 rocky planets orbiting.
I love it how also whenever NASA's about to announce something and they announce that they're going to announce something,
oh yeah,
the buzz around the speculation is like, they've discovered aliens. This is it. They're finally going to announce life somewhere else, and they've got aliens. And
they're not
going
to just announce aliens.
Yeah,
well, like,
that's not how that's going to go at all.
Yeah, that's how that's going to go. It's not going to be there's an asteroid about to hit Earth, but we want to embargo it for like 4 days. So that we have our press release announcement. Like that one you're going to hear right away. Okay. But that was like the buzz, like it's like huge announcement, huge, and it is big.
It's not alien life, but what is big? Yeah. It's not, and I'm going to say this, it's not even rocky planets with water. They have not found water holding planetary bodies. But this is not what they have found. It's all
in the habitable where water could be liquid zones.
Yes. So there are 3 of the 7 planets. 3 of them are within the Goldilocks or habitable zone. Mm-hmm. And if they could have water, if they have water, then it would be liquid because they would be in the habitable zone. We don't know if they have the right atmospheric conditions to do this. One of the things that it's very possible for these planets is that they are tidally locked. And tidally locked means that they don't rotate around their own axis. They would constantly be basically facing the same way around the planet. And if that is the case, then they would not have any centripetal forces or Coriolis forces from their own rotation to really move and mix an atmosphere. However, these 7 planets are very, very close to their parent star, and the 6th planet, TRAPPIST-1F, orbits the planet in about 9 days. Orbits the star in about 9 days. It's very quick.
That's speedy.
These planets, and there's an
it's like
image.
40-something years, Earth years, per year. But they might not be. They might not be tidally locked. They could be.
They might not be, but they could. We don't know that. All they have seen are these blips from the transiting of the planets, the occultation of the star by the planets as they move past the star and dim its light, and then move past each other as they orbit about and dim each other's light. And so that's how they kind of know where each of the stars are in relation to the others. Now, one of the fascinating things about where these where these stars are located, where the planets are located, is that in comparison to our own solar system, where we are, the distance from the sun to the earth, we call it 1 astronomical unit. These are not even close to that. The distance from the star, the TRAPPIST-1 star, and these planets, they would fit very neatly into the interior of our solar system, right next to our sun, and they wouldn't even come close to hitting Mercury, the closest planet to our star.
They're all they're all within closer than Mercury. So they're all like pretty tight.
How is that still the habitable zone if it's so close?
Because the sun itself doesn't put off as much heat as ours.
Yeah, the TRAPPIST star is very dim, so it doesn't put out as much heat as ours or light as ours. And TRAPPIST-1e, which is the 4th planet in the system, the first of the habitable ones, receives approximately as much light as Earth, but it's very, very close to its parent star. 1F is a little bit larger than 1E, probably more similar to the size of the Earth, but receives approximately the amount of light as would Mars. And then 1G receives even less light, and it's probably more like the asteroid belt amount of light. So we're talking about it's just very interesting. Now, the distance from the star, how much energy that star is putting out, and then how much energy each of these planets are receiving. I mean, seriously, 9 days orbiting is a very short period of time to orbit a parent star. And so if we're thinking about, is life existing there? This is going to be incredibly different forces on these rocky bodies than the forces that are influencing or have influenced the formation of our own solar system. And so people jumping on is there life in the TRAPPIST system bandwagon, you're getting way ahead of the gun.
Yeah.
Because we don't know if there's water anywhere.
Right.
We don't know how much, we don't know about their atmospheric conditions, whether they have atmospheres, how long has this system been evolving? And so did they once have atmospheres? Have they been burned off over the life cycle of the star? Because they are so close. How much radiation have these planets received from their star, and how would that influence life, especially if they don't have dense atmospheres or if they're not rotating about their own axis, a magnetic field to protect themselves from the bombardment of the solar radiation from the TRAPPIST system. This is
the most exciting object out there or system out there right now to study further. Because they could have all of these elements. They could be rotating. They could have water. And they're within zones that would allow them to somewhat mimic what the Earth has experienced. And not that life necessarily depends on an exact Earth-like situation.
No.
We just have one example where it worked. So, of course, that's why we're intrigued.
And it definitely could be, maybe it's a microbial system, maybe something, what we're looking forward to, I think, as humans or humanity, it's the excitement of complex life.
We want to find a planet just dominated by dinosaurs, or at least I do.
You do.
It's like dinosaurs
and maybe a giant ape.
And some giant ape, yeah. We want to find the King Kong Island on a planet. Right, somewhere. That's what we're really looking for.
Yeah, some of the exciting things about this particular system, though, are that these different planetary bodies in the TRAPPIST system, it would be a very red light from the star because it's a dim star. The planets are close enough to each other that they would be visible in the sky very often, and the closer planets would be about the same size as the moon, and so you would be able to see multiple planets looking like the moon does in our own sky in the night, in the sky.
And with our current technology applied to that solar system, it means we could visit other planets if we had a solar system, which, I mean, we have.
Right. You could jump. You could potentially. This particular star is 40 light years away. So just getting there in the first place
It'll take a little while.
Easy.
It'll take a little while.
It'll take a little 40
some
light
time.
years traveling at light speed. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're right. If we could get there, the planet hopping idea, NASA's already there and has vacation posters that have been made up for the space tourists among us, which are just, they're fantastic. And then there's some really neat things that NASA has come up with. There's a desktop app that you can download, which is called Eyes on Exoplanets, where you, from your desktop computer, can fly to any planet that you want to be able to look at about 1,000 exoplanets that we know to orbit distant stars based on artists' renditions and what we know about them from observations so far. And there's a mobile app that allows, with as NASA says, the touch of a screen or the click of a mouse, you can visit the newly discovered TRAPPIST-1 system in the Exoplanet Atlas. The New Worlds Atlas contains every exoplanet discovery, powered by NASA's Exoplanet Archive, the official database used by professional astronomers engaged in exploring new worlds. There are all sorts of resources that have been made available by NASA for people to get excited about this. NASA, with their press release today, they're obviously very excited about the discovery of this exoplanet system and what it can tell us. There was a diagram today also that, if you want to think of it, it's more of a laboratory in space that we can use it to study different solar system formation. We can use it also. Some people have compared it not so much to our own solar system, but maybe more similar to the setup of the moons around Jupiter, in the way that they are close in and how many of them. And
the gist I got from NASA was, in a way, like, this is beyond the pale of what they could hope to find in terms of things that are in the habitable region. You got 3 within the same solar system, and then even the outliers aren't that far out of it, which means that they even would have potential. And this isn't, it's sort of like, this isn't something that was off the charts in terms of what could possibly happen or could possibly exist, but the fact that we've got one within sight of our advanced, ability to use deep space technology and all this sort of thing, it is close enough to do a number of layers of investigation. That is really what's got them excited. That this is one of those things that's an outlier possibility that nobody really expected to be able to stumble across. There it is, and now we have the ability to investigate further within this system. This is going to be something I think we're going to be talking about quite a bit in the next year or two.
Absolutely. And I think especially that once the James Webb Space Telescope gets online, 2018, that space telescope should be launching, and it's going to be an infrared camera that will be giving us a lot of different information about all these systems that we have logged and that we want to find out more about. And so it'll give us new and different eyes onto that. And so Hubble's going to be looking at this TRAPPIST system. There are other systems that as telescopes come online, or as people think of using them, this is a system they are curious about. They want to know if
Hubble,
there's water
and
there.
already have these on the radar for investigation, follow-up studies.
More studies to come. Yeah, so exciting. So very exciting. So those headlines about life no, that's not what this is. But rocky planets that are potentially Earth-like, very different system setup, but that's cool. Differences can vary revealing.
And could be life. That's the thing. That's what's so intriguing. Is this is where we would this is
the scientist in me going, we don't have that evidence.
No, we don't have that evidence, but we have 3 planets in one system.
In a crazy system where they're orbiting at like 9 days.
But there's 3 of them in one system that we can study that have the basic, what we consider to be the basic qualifications for habitability.
Well, and I feel like I always have to have a quick mention at this point in the conversation that what we think the habitable zone is and what we think you need for life, like water and all these sorts of things, that's based on how we know life works here.
Mm-hmm.
So that also is a lot of assumption saying that you can't have life without those things on these other in these other spaces. We don't know that either.
No, but we're basing it on result-oriented science, which is we have a result on a planet like this, and result-oriented science is very important because this is how paleontologists rely on, say, geology. You know, you don't go digging through 10,000-year-old earth mounds hoping to find dinosaur bones, right? You base your search on places that fit parameters that you already know. And you're absolutely right, Blair. And you're absolutely right, Kiki. And I'm absolutely speculating that because you're both right, this is a great place to look.
Thank you for saying that.
Great.
Is it the first time?
No, it's okay.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. So I do think it's important to say that, you know, who knows? Maybe we'll find new life in something that we didn't even think was a habitable space.
And it could be giant dinosaurs. We just don't know.
We don't know. It's true.
We won't know until we find it.
We can make evidence-based best guesses at this. Yes. And you know, my best guess for what they're going to name these planets, I hope they are named after Belgian beers.
I was going to say
Trappist,
the 7 dwarfs.
Monks. Yeah. So there's a couple of things here. My Goldilocks and the 7 Belgian monks.
Yeah.
And I was making a play off of the Goldilocks zone, Snow White and the 7 dwarfs, and Belgian monks and Belgian beer.
You got it. I like it.
Boom.
You got a lot in there.
The title of this show, I think it's my epic, my opus.
Well, you better start tweeting then.
All right, Justin, let's move on from these amazing extreme exoplanets that are exciting us so much. What do you have, Justin?
We live in a world that at times seems deeply divided. We're told the left thinks this way, the right thinks that way. One side is creative while the other is not. But what if it's all a myth? What if the world we live in, and by world, of course, I'm speaking of the brain in which you are living, what if the brain isn't as left-right oriented as we once thought? New study suggests, in the case of creative people, it's not which side of the brain is relied upon, but how well the 2 brain hemispheres communicate that counts. For the study, statisticians David Dunson of Duke University and Daniel Durant of the University of Padova analyzed the network of white matter connections from among 68 separate brain regions in healthy college-age volunteers. What's college age? Does that mean?
It's like 18 to 21, 22.
Yeah.
Nobody else can go to college? That doesn't seem like right. Anyway, the brain's white matter lies underneath the outer gray matter, composed of the bundles of wires and axons, connects billions of neurons and carries electrical signals between them. A team led by neuroscientist Rex Young of the University of New Mexico collected the data using MRI technique called diffusion tensor imaging, which allows researchers to peer through the skull of a living person, trace the paths of all the axons by following the movement of water in the brain. Computers then compiled each gigabyte, scanned and converted them to 3-dimensional maps, like looking at a wiring diagram of the brain at work. Young's team used a combination of tests to assess creativity. Some measured divergent thinking problem solving, highlighting the individual's ability to come up with many answers to a single question. They were tasked with drawing as many geometric designs as they could in 5 minutes. They had to list as many new uses as they could for everyday objects, such as a brick or a paperclip. The participants also filled out a questionnaire about their achievements in 10 areas, including visual arts, music, creative writing, dance, cooking, and science. The responses were then put into a computer, calculated a composite creativity score for each person. They found no statistical differences in connectivity within the hemispheres or between men and women.
I would hope not between men and women. I mean, that would be kind of weird with the neurons between the peoples.
No, but I mean, differences between connectivity.
I know, kidding. I know. This is not something. This connectivity is not something that is one of the things that is different between men and women.
Yes, but when they I think those other things should be well defined by now. But when they compared people who scored in the top 15% on the creativity tests with those in the bottom 15% of the creativity test, high-scoring people had significantly more connections between the right and the left hemispheres. Biggest differences were mainly in the brain's frontal lobe. Dunson said their approach could also be used to predict the probability that a person will be highly creative simply based on his or her brain network structure. Maybe, quotey voice, maybe by scanning a person's brain, we could tell what they're likely to be good at, Dunson said. So in the future,
No.
the stress of deciding which educational major direction to pursue could be counseled by a brain scan and a bit of.
No, and so this is another thing where it's like, this is not a causal thing necessarily. We don't know whether it's like people who are more into all these different activities and being creative or whatever the creativity is that they're measuring, whether that leads to the formation of more connections between the hemispheres, or whether the people have more connections between their hemispheres and so they're more drawn to these creative endeavors. So so choosing to scan someone's brain and saying they have lots of connectivity and this, no, that quote, that researcher just needs to go sit in the lab by himself.
Bad scientist.
I'm disagreeing here a little bit. I mean, I don't think you could drill down and say, okay, based on your scan, you're going to be an accountant that works with corporate law. I don't think that, but I do think that if you could get a scan that says you need to be in something that's going to keep you engaged in a lot of different directions, and it could be a huge correlation of things that can do that, and then you pick what you're more interested at, and if you don't score highly in this, then you are automatically sent to a vocational school and forced to work in a labor camp. Doesn't that make sense?
Honestly, to say,
right, Brave New World.
Look at this and say that we definitively understand the brain well enough to designate what you should do for the rest of your life. Are you crazy? We are nowhere near understanding the brain that well.
And even finding that, so yes, what this study has found is that there is increased connectivity between the hemispheres of the brains of what we define as creative individuals. That's all this study can say. That's what the study looked at, and that's what the study that's what it found, and that's what you can say. You can't jump to understand.
I'm going to defend Dunson, who I do not know, and say Dunson's quote is maybe by scanning. Maybe. But
see, this is another case of
by scanning a person's brain, we can dictate their future. No,
it was a quote taken out of context, I'm sure.
And it was probably probed, asking for implications from the study. I understand all of that. But this is also another situation, just like he was saying, of correlation versus causation.
Wow. Okay, audience, I'm talking directly to you right now.
These are people in college who have already had years of doing things.
Which, by the way, their brains aren't even done transforming until at least age 28.
Having their brain connectivity tested.
Especially the frontal areas of the brain that they were looking at. Not done developing.
my co-hosts are afraid that their brains connectivity won't back up their career choices. So there's also
No, I
other,
would say more that my brain at age 22 would in no way reflect what I am doing now.
Absolutely
what if it
not.
predicted it? What if it did predict it?
Don't think
You
so.
don't know.
Well, the study
So
doesn't either
either-
because it wasn't a long-term study.
But it will be eventually. So this is also, they're also talking about, by studying the patterns of interconnections in healthy versus diseased brains, they and other researchers also hope to better understand dementia, epilepsy, schizophrenia, and other neurological conditions such as traumatic brain injury or coma. So there are going to be potential medical benefits to being able to study what the brain is looking like in a very healthy, connected, creative, functioning person versus
Somebody who's
where
not.
they may.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that I can understand. We look at healthy
And
functioning versus diseased functioning and start looking at ways that we can use it to help people.
and they're also developing statistical methods to find out whether brain connectivity varies with IQ. About the relationship between IQ and creativity. So you could have this, how like they have the emotional IQ, bunch of garbage because I don't really understand it. You could have a separate creativity IQ, which you could score very high on, even if you stunk at the regular IQ test. And I think there is a degree to which, if you were a university selecting people to enter fields and wanting to hopefully recruit people who would excel at them, that you could look to whether somebody's brain seems to be wired to creativity to, say, enter an art department or a writing department or whatever. I mean, creativity can be across the fields. It doesn't have to be limited to the arts. But you might preference a score of creativity, knowing that somebody can do this lateral hemispherical thinking better, as opposed to simply an IQ, and certainly not an emotional IQ test. So I don't know. I think it's fascinating. I think it's
things that are brain based and actually and physically based could be better predictors of performance. Could be better predictors of performance than question and answer, multiple choice type IQ tests that we currently and emotional creativity tests and various things that we currently have, because very often people test differently and behavior of the test is output as opposed to what's actually going on inside. So
and this is also just a personal axe I have to grind for my own testing, which has always been my spelling scores on when they did, like, this is high school this is like forever ago, but I would get like 24% on the spelling test, which means I'm a complete idiot, but I'd get like 99% on comprehension. But they all those numbers go in. I'm like, you should be able to like get rid of an outlier, like in any good scientist. Get rid of the outlier, right? Which would actually, I guess, get rid of both of those scores. So then I'd be left. I'd been in trouble anyway.
You're in trouble no matter what. All right. Moving forward, let's keep this show moving so we can finish it in under 2 hours, people. Let's keep it moving.
That be the goal?
Yes, it's the goal. We got to finish the show. I am going to finish this show. Blair, what's in the animal corner? What it is? It's time for the animal corner.
What time is it? Oh, there's a whole segment. You're rushing through bumper music now.
We got smart creatures, great and small. Biped, millipede, no pet at all. If you want to hear about animals, she's your girl. Except for giant pandas and squirrels.
What you got, Blair?
Oh, I have a couple studies this week looking at ways that technology can help us save animals out in the wilderness, which sound like two ideas that often cannot jive. However, one of my favorite studies I've seen in technology helping wild animals comes out of Madagascar from Michigan State University looking at lemurs. And they were looking at seeing if they could create something called lemur face ID. So they took facial recognition software that already existed and they tried to tweak it to identify lemur faces. They found that they could correctly identify more than 100 individual lemurs with 98.7% accuracy.
Nice.
Yeah, they have unique facial characteristics just like humans. And once they've optimized this lemur face ID, they could do long-term research studies with lemurs out in the wild in Madagascar without having to catch them and color them, without having to use IDs that could change, like if somebody lost part of their tail and their tail was their identifier before, then you lose that animal ID completely. The lemur mugshots, as it were, in theory never change, despite their fur being thicker in certain times of the year or scarring or anything like that. For the most part, facial recognition would still work. So they used 462 images of 80 red-bellied lemurs, which are actually my favorite species of lemur, and 190 images of other lemur species, and they created this data set for facial recognition. Most of them were taken out in the wild, and they relied on this data to help them make lemur face ID. They do think that this can help replace capture and collar, which, as I mentioned, can affect your study because you're actually catching the animals. That can affect your data, but it also means that you're reliant on things like batteries and whether they slip out of the collar and all these sorts of things.
So what I find interesting here is this idea that there are these individually identifying facial features, that there are things like distance between the eyes, length of the nose. There are various features that can be used that we use to identify people.
Yeah.
So we're a primate, right?
Yes.
Why not use the same thing to identify another primate? This is fascinating.
Absolutely.
And we so often because we aren't the animals that we're studying, we aren't sensitive to the traits that other individuals of whatever species might be sensitive to. And so we always base things on, the bird with the big breast patch, or the bright colors, or, there's, just body size in general. It's the bigger individuals, but maybe there are much more subtle individual facial cues. Yeah. The cute
Absolutely.
lemurs, the handsome lemurs.
Yeah. So this is so interesting. I was thinking about this when I was a zookeeper and I worked with 18 different squirrel monkeys. When I was learning the 18 squirrel monkeys apart, because that was part of being cleared to work in that space, you had to be able to identify if somebody fell and needed medical attention, if somebody was acting weird, if somebody didn't take food, I would have to be able to know who that was, right? And so as I was learning, I would be told things like, Che has he usually hangs out in this space, and Mac has big biceps and stuff like that, right? But I started to notice, the more I worked with them, these things I couldn't quite put my finger on, but I would be able to just look at individual monkeys and go, that's Orlando. And I can't really, it would usually be in the face. I had such a hard time putting it into words. I would try to say, well, Tigger always looks like this. Right? So it's something that I couldn't put into words super well, but that's essentially what was happening. Because I was spending every day with them, I was learning to recognize faces. And the second that I stopped working in that space, I came back later and I couldn't tell who was who anymore.
Interesting.
And it's because we are so used to looking at signifiers on humans that our facial recognition of humans is fantastic, but you can train yourself to do facial recognition on other animals. If you think about seeing a room full, I have a yellow lab at home, and if I saw a room full of yellow labs, I am confident I could pick out my dog. Why
Absolutely.
is that?
Yeah.
It's because I spend so much time with her, right? And so this takes that basic data and it applies it to lemurs. They also think that they can use this lemur face ID to help with conservation, not just in research, but if they ever see a trapped animal, an animal trying to be traded illegally, they can identify which animal it is. And if it's an animal that continually keeps getting trapped, maybe that animal can't live in the wild anymore and needs some assistance. Maybe that animal needs protection. They also think that they could apply this lemur face ID with some slight adjustments to identify other primates, of course, and non-primate species with variable facial hair and skin patterns like bears, red pandas, raccoons, or sloths. This could be huge because I do wonder a lot about things like collaring. It's what we have, the collars. And so we're using them and I'm all about it. But if there are other ways for us to identify these individuals,
Less invasive, yeah.
Less invasive,
Absolutely.
but it's also, I can't help but wonder, especially when we're doing social studies with animals, especially primates, is that animal with a collar on being treated the same as everyone else?
Yeah.
Is it a confounding variable? We don't know because we need it to track our data. So it could be pretty interesting. And along those same lines, instead of facial recognition,
Before you move on, I just want to make
yeah.
this statement, though, that
Yeah.
it's fascinating that facial recognition technology is being used in this way. I mean, if we can track ourselves and if we can, make ourselves out of a Facebook picture lineup, or if Google can pick us out of images, why not be able to use it for various different purposes? I mean, identify everybody on the planet. Let's do it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's, I mean,
It's
it
what
might be a
artificial
little
intelligence
creepy
is for.
when Facebook knows who I am based on my face,
Mhm.
but it could be helping the lemurs. So, silver lining.
Silver lining.
So then a similar adaptation of technology using actually Microsoft research looked at identifying mosquitoes. And just like the facial recognition of lemurs identified individual lemurs, this could identify species of bugs and even down to the species of mosquito. And this is a new smart trap that the way it would work, it would actually, in real time, make a choice about what species of insect flew into the trap, closing its door or not, and then recording data about the surrounding environment so that it knows when specific species come around. So
Wow.
so there's 64 smart cells. They're all compartments outfitted with infrared light. And when an insect crosses the beam, the shadow changes the light intensity in a way that makes essentially a species fingerprint. Based on that information, the door will snap close if it is, for example, Aedes aegypti, the mosquito that carries Zika. And then it can send all of that other information like temperature, humidity, and the time of day, other environmental conditions of your choosing. All of that gets sent in real time. And they did a trial of this smart trap in Harris County, Texas in late July and August, and it was more than 90% accurate in identifying which insects were coming through. Yeah. This is crazy. It's a lot more than a bug zapper here. 90% accurate.
Although it is a bug zapper, but it's a very smart bug zapper.
Yes. And so this could be huge in keeping an eye on particular mosquito-borne illnesses such as Zika and making sure that we know its movement. The other thing that this smart trap can do is it actually can see if the individual mosquito it caught is carrying anything.
What?
Geez.
Yeah. So that is the part that's really fascinating, is that it takes it a step further by seeing what diseases those individual mosquitoes have.
So basically doing a a DNA test of the blood, smashing the mosquito and doing a DNA test on the
Yeah.
spot.
So here's also
That could be
another
amazing if it works. Yeah.
potential application for this, which would be as in agriculture. You have pollinators versus pest.
Mm-hmm.
And if you use a pesticide, it kills pretty much everything. Here's if this got to that really applicable, put it out in the ag fields and, get a few thousand of these out there. You could be catching the pests and leaving the pollinators, or the otherwise harmless bugs alone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And we've talked recently on the show about how mosquitoes, we used to say, who needs them? But we've
some
actually,
of them are good.
we
Some of them are
found
just-
now
yeah.
from recent research that some mosquitoes are pollinators. So much for
Oh,
that.
mosquito, he fly high. Oh, mosquito, he fly low. But
Yeah,
if
this
that
trap,
mosquito lands on me, you ain't gonna fly no more.
this trap can do the blood check for harmful pathogens, and it can even, I forgot about this, tell what animal the mosquito had been biting recently.
Wow.
So this can be used to stop emerging diseases, but also predict emerging diseases.
Also, quick side note: if you've ever considered getting a bug zapper to eliminate bugs near your property, don't do it. They attract greater numbers of insects than they actually kill. So if you want to divert insects from your property, give one as a gift to your neighbor.
Interesting.
So this is this is from a Microsoft-led research team, which I think is interesting, especially knowing the Gates family's connection to mosquito-borne illnesses in Africa and that kind of stuff. I didn't do any intense research on that, but I am not surprised at all to see that link. And I hope that the big question here towards the end of the article is about keeping these smart traps cheap enough to actually put out and use in full force to help prevent outbreaks and traits outbreaks. So
Yeah, well, if scientists can get a hold of them to be able to, biologists can put them out in the field and be able to find out whether or not Zika carrying mosquitoes are prevalent, or whether or not different kinds of mosquitoes or other insects are, biting flies are the insects that come out morning, noon, or night on various times of the year. I mean, it's gonna help so much.
yeah, absolutely. And the research team also says that they are working to keep the microprocessor cost down as they go, and they are also planning to test to see if they can use drones to place them in remote areas.
Drones.
It always comes back to drones.
Yeah, I think any excuse young researchers get to work with drones, they work it in.
Or remote control cars.
Or
Yeah.
remote control cars, or,
Yeah, absolutely.
sticks with poo.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on, I'm going to jump to an interesting story that was sent to me by David Eckerd this morning. And I noticed it this morning as well, reported on Stat, that there is a report in Cell Reports this week of researchers who have used a small molecule chemical cocktail to basically cause progenitor populations of hair cells to expand in the inner ear, or the cochlea, of mice, and that this has promise. Also, they tested it on one person to see if this in a dish would work to expand this population of basically hair cell stem cells, and it works. It worked. Yeah, so they're moving on to trying human trials. They've started a startup and they're moving on to human trials. But the hair cell is the cell. It's like a little cell that's encased in the gelatinous goo in the inside of your inner ear. And when sound vibrations come along, they go, and the little, there's these little cilia, these hairs on the hair cell, and they bend one way or another to turn on or off, and they send the signal of the sound to the nerves, and the nerves go into the brain, and that's how you hear. These hair cells are the things that get damaged when you listen to your music too loud wearing earbud headphones. These hair cells are the things that are damaged by loud rock concerts. These hair cells are the things that get damaged and lead to a large amount of degenerative hearing loss. I mean, hearing aids are a big money-making business because of hair cells.
You know, I think that drummers everywhere would love. Excuse me. I think drummers everywhere should pay attention to this story.
And so the exciting thing here is, this is worked in these mice, and I've got this little image from the study that kind of can give you an idea of where in the ear, deep in the spirally cochlea inside your ear. They've taken these cells, and they're kind of hair cell support cells. And now in humans, once your hair cells are damaged, they die, and they do not come back. There is nothing that will bring them back. But they found that there are these they used research based on the epithelium of the intestine, actually, stuff they'd learned about signaling molecules in the epithelium of the intestine to get cilia cells in the intestine to reproduce themselves and to keep growing. They used information that they found there to kind of go, I wonder if we can make this work with these hair cells, because inside this what we're looking at, these cells, this is an epithelium. This is the same kind of lining. And so maybe we can send some instructions there that are just missing. And what they found is they could send the right instructions to kind of get these supporting cells to turn into progenitors for hair cells, and then the environment inside the inner ear in the cochlea naturally allowed those progenitor cells to then grow into and become hair cells. And so they didn't have to do anything extra. They kind of got the process started, got these support cells to kind of shift over into, maybe we want to be in hair cell mode, and then the inner ear just did it on its own. And what they'll be able to do with this, which is exciting because it's just kind of a drug cocktail, is potentially what they're going to be testing down the road, is that it would be something as simple as putting drops in your ear for an ear infection. That it could be just a drop-like delivery to the inner ear that would then just start the process on its own. That's what they're hoping for. 5 to 10 years.
That's great.
I don't know how soon it'll be. But
so I can start going to rock concerts again, and I can stop using earplugs, it sounds like.
That's not what I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
But I
you never let me have any fun anymore.
I work with somebody who's been a lifelong drummer, and as in some scenarios, as comical as it can be, to have somebody whose hearing is degraded that you work with, it's also like makes things very difficult for them. And hearing aids are, like you said, expensive, and they're not like as cutting edge as we would like to think. A high-end hearing aid can be in the $20,000-$30,000 range for the cutting edge technology of this thing. So it's this is awesome. This is getting people back a sense. This is kind of like, I put this up there with curing blindness. It's right there with it.
Those right up there. Yeah.
Those are those two things. Like if you that false question that you're always confronted with. If you could lose your sense of sight or your sense of hearing, which would you choose? And it's a real struggle for people to go, which one do I really, am I that much more attached to or really think is that important? And it's easier to get rid of maybe touch or smell or even taste for some of us, but to get rid of sight versus hearing, such a huge thing. You'd lose all music versus losing visual art stuff. But the fact that they could cure it with an eardrop.
Potentially, yeah. So within 18 months, they're going to hopefully start testing this on people. And
that's so awesome.
Yeah,
that's like my favorite. This stuff. Actually, with everything that we've done, this is my favorite story of the year right here. so far. This is it. That's really incredible.
This could be very life-changing for many people if it pans out. We're still very early in the process.
We're not there yet,
but this is one of those exciting things. Yeah.
This is the most exciting thing. We're turning a sense, because again, I believe that we are where we are is in our brain, and our only access to the world is through these senses. So returning a sense that was turned off gives a huge access to being in the world again to people.
Yep.
Massive.
Yeah. So
how did this end up so far down the list? We'll do this story
because
again.
no, we're not going to do this story.
No, I mean, we got to follow up on it again.
Okay, I'm moving on to my next story because I am trying to finish this show up. I have 2 more stories to go, and Blair has a story to go. A really neat story out in Public Library of Science Biology, in which researchers it took a zebrafish, these little tiny fish, and they were fish that lacked an enteric nervous system, and the enteric nervous system are the nerves that are inside the gut. They control your gut motility, whether or not humans, we have peristaltic activity once every 15 minutes. I don't know, every once in a while, you have a peristaltic wave that pushes through your intestines to push a bolus of food from the stomach all the way out. And that's controlled by your enteric nervous system. So they took these zebrafish that lacked an enteric nervous system, and they looked at their microbiota in the gut. And they found that the fish that lacked a nervous system in their gut suffered from inflammation in their gut. They had more inflammatory bacteria in their gut than they had non-inflammatory bacteria. They turned the enteric nervous system on by either putting it back in or by using chemicals to stimulate gut contraction and peristalsis. The bacterial makeup changed and inflammation went away. So, question here. What they are positing, what they're demonstrating is that the enteric nervous system, the nerves in the gut, actually modulate the microbial community that lives in the gut to maintain intestinal health.
They're like the bouncer of the gut, is what you're saying.
Like the bouncer of the gut.
You're in, you're out.
And so it doesn't necessarily, peristalsis is the largest obvious effect of an enteric nervous system, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the physical activity of peristalsis. The enteric gut, the enteric nervous system also delivers all sorts of stimulation for various reasons. And so there could be a lot of communication going on within the gut between the gut nervous system and the gut bacteria. And the gut nervous system could be very, very important in monitoring and managing your gut health. So, more interesting twists and turns to the microbial gut story that we have come to know and love. And then I'm going to round out my I started the show talking about exoplanets, and now I'm going to end my part of the show. We're talking about, again, NASA researchers finding life, microbial life, inside a deep old mine, locked in minerals. NASA researchers mined the Nika mine in Chihuahua, Mexico. Meters long gypsum crystals are the kinds of crystals that you would find in this cave. But the researchers found microbes. They took samples back to the lab. Some of the microbes were 60,000 years old in a state of suspended animation.
Like a mosquito in amber?
Like a mosquito in amber. But in this case, they were able to revive many of the microbes that they found in this cave. So some of them they couldn't find. The researcher told one of the researchers told the Telegraph, much to my surprise, we got things to grow. It was laborious. We lost some of them. That's just the game. They've got needs we can't fulfill. That part of it was really like zookeeping.
Okay.
But the idea here is that this the suspended animation and the fact that they found they can age some of these microbes at up to 60,000 years old suggests that panspermia really is possible. And we talked last week about fungus. Was it fungus or algae that was from Norway that survived on the exterior of the International Space Station by going into a suspended animated state? And so this week we find that some microbes have been maybe they've been in suspended animation for 60,000 years. I mean, maybe they've been around for a very long time. And how long could you potentially be on a rock in space in suspended animation? Shot off of some planet, rock going through space until you land on another one. Right. So the dating of this in this study, this is a very interesting finding toward the possibilities of panspermia and life throughout the universe.
The question is, who sent them?
Right.
And there was some story that I didn't bring this week that was talking about how the Earth has more heavy iron isotopes than light isotopes as compared to our solar system around us. It's an unresolved question in the Earth's formation, perhaps, why our iron composition is slightly different than our surrounding solar system. And we happen to be the only one with life in it. So it could have been like, panspermia, intersolar thingy hit us. Probably not, though.
Probably not.
Probably not. Not
and in the chat room, Fat is telling us a story about some cats that survived the ice. But Blair, didn't you have a cat story?
Meow.
Meow? Right, meow.
Right, meow. May I tell you about it, meow? Yes. It turns out that despite what you may believe, previous comments about how cat ownership might contribute to mental disorders because of toxoplasmosis. A new study published in Psychological Medicine suggests that cat ownership in pregnancy and childhood does not play a role in developing psychotic symptoms during adolescence. They looked at nearly 5,000 people born in 1991 or 1992. They were followed until the age of 18, and they had data on whether the household had cats while the mother was pregnant and when the children were growing up. And they found a very clear lack of correlation. There is no evidence that cats pose a risk to children's mental health. And they did initially have an analysis that suggested a link between cat ownership and psychotic symptoms at age 13, but that turned out to be due to other factors. So when they zeroed out other variables, when they adjusted for other variables, that link was gone. Previous studies, it looks like the problem with previous research is that they would ask people who currently have normal or abnormal psychological statuses about their childhood. And the problem with that is that obviously human recollection, not always super accurate. But this study is the first one to actually follow people throughout their lives growing up, seeing whether or not they have cats at home, and they saw no link. The big disclaimer on this is that it is still a good idea for pregnant women to stay far away from cat litter.
And I'll forego doing my next, the last story I had. I'll bring that next week just to follow up on this one.
Well, you've said it before. I know where you're going with this.
What?
Go ahead.
They were not able to test in any of these households whether the cats had toxoplasmosis. Had toxoplasmosis. They could not test for T. gondii in this. And they followed 5,000 people until they turned 18 and then walked away from them, as though this isn't something that can be embedded in your brain and reemerge later in life. They left out all the factors of the disease, and they left out those parts that that looked like they contributed because they found other factors to give them reason to pull it out. So
That's called science, though.
I get that this group of psychologists, who are probably all cat owners, wanted to make it okay for other people to have cats. You're okay, I'm okay. But there's probably a reason that they're studying psychology. The reason they got into psychology is because there were psychological problems at home, and because probably they had cats. This is fitting the formula for why cats should be kept away from people who want to have sane, healthy lives. That's all I'm saying.
Wow, there's a whole lot of non-science in what you just said.
There was a whole lot of non-science in this study. Let me just say.
I would beg to differ. That's why I reported on it. It seemed like good science to me. But
So
go.
here's what you do. Here's what you actually do. Here's how you go with the results first. You start with an actual evidence-based result, and you look at people who are infected with T. gondii. And you look at what those effects have as a percentage of that population. What if there are manifestations
compared to people who are not infected with T. gondii who also own cats.
Correct.
So you have to have a proper control group. Yeah.
Right. That's when they say, okay, if you have T. gondii, you have higher rates. Now, what is the vector for T. gondii? How do you get T. gondii? It only replicates in cats. So it pretty much is a cat vectored disease, a parasite. So we can have this debate at some other time, but we have to get more than, we looked at 5,000 people who at the age of 18 hadn't shown signs of psychosis, and therefore cats are fine, is not a study that's really looking at the issue. Nice undergrad paper.
Yeah, and we have gone through all of our stories. This is amazing. An interview, a whole bunch of amazing science stories, some debate, even some ranting. We've had all sorts of fun here tonight on This Week in Science. I hope everybody's had a whole lot of fun. Did you guys have fun?
I did. And I left my favorite story this week till next week.
Oh, you're making it? Okay.
Wait, you didn't have fun? You had no fun? You're about to go, not bathe for 30 days. And
I know.
Penguins. You're not having fun.
You signed up to, not bathe so that you could have penguin fun. So
worth it.
Worth it. All right, everybody.
You still can't brush your teeth, though, I think.
I think it's about time to give our shout outs, and I want to say thank you to our Patreon sponsors.
Ooh, here comes the crawl.
Woo. Here comes the crawl. Thank you, Patreon sponsors. I'd like to thank Chris Kark, Paul Disney, Cheaper Lattimore, John Ratnaswamy, Richard Onemus, Byron Lee, EO, Jared Lysette, Kevin Parachan, Andy Groh, Keith Corsell, Jake Jones, Gerald Sorrells, Ulysses Adkins, Derek Nickel, David Friedel, James Randall, Eric Schwab, Bob Calder, Mark Mazzaros, Edward Dyer, Trainer 84, Brian Hedrick, Layla Marshall Clark, Charlene Henry, Derek Garcia, Mark Randy Mizuka, Tony Steele, Jared Onyago, Steve DeBell, Ksenia Volkova, Daryl, Harun Sarang, Melissa Mosley, Alex Wilson, Jason Schneiderman, Greg Guthman, Dave Neighbor, Jason Dozier, Matthew Litwin, Eric Knapp, Jason Roberts, Richard Porter, Rodney, David Wiley, Robert Aston, Aurora Lee, Bill Kersey, Ben Rothig, Darwin Hannon, Rudy Garcia, Nick Babasi, Felix Alvarez, Cosmic Gypsy, Brian Hone, Orly Radio, Brian Condren, Mark, Nathan Greco, Hexator, Deborah Smith, Mike Schneeves, Frying Out, John Crocker, Christopher Dreyer, Sylvan Westby, Artyom Shiwata, David Wilkinson, Steve Mashinsky, Rick Ramus, Gary Swinsberg, Phil Nadeau, Braxton Howard, Selgood, Sam Metzetter, Emma Grenier, Phil Shane, James Dobson, Kurt Larson, Stefan Insom, Michael George, Russell Jessen, Mount Sloth, Jim Trapo, John Maloney, Jason Olds, James Paul West, Alec Doty, Lumalama, Joe Wheeler, Dougal Campbell, Craig Porter, Adam Mishkan, Aaron Luthen, Marjorie, Paul Stanton, David Zimmerly, Tyler Harrison, Columbo Ahmed. Thank you for all your support on Patreon. And for those of you who are interested in supporting us, you can find information at patreon.com/thisweekinscience. Also, remember that you can help us out simply by telling your friends about TWIS. And on next week's show, once again, we're going to be back broadcasting live online at 8 p.m. Pacific time on twis.org/live. You can find us there with our chat room. But don't worry if you can't make it. You can find our past episodes at twis.org/YouTube or twis.org.
Thank you for enjoying the show. TWIS is, of course, available as a podcast. Just Google This Week in Science in your iTunes directory, or if you have a mobile type device. We are TWIS, the number 4 Droid app in the Android marketplace, or simply This Week in Science in anything Apple marketplacey.
4, more information on anything you may have heard here today. Show notes will be available on our website. That's at www.twis.org, where you can also make comments and start conversations with the hosts and other listeners.
Or you can contact us directly. Email Kirsten at thisweekinscience.com, Justin at twistminion@gmail.com, or Blair at blairbaz@twis.org. Just be sure to put TWIS, TWIS, somewhere in the subject line, or your email will be spam filtered into oblivion. You can also hit us up on the Twitter, where we are at TWIS Science, at Dr. Kiki, at Jacksonfly, and at Blair's Menagerie. We love your feedback. If there's a topic you would like us to cover or address, a suggestion for an interview, a haiku that comes during the night, please let us know.
We will be back here next week, and we hope you'll join us again for more great science news.
And if you have learned anything from the show, remember,
It's all in your head.
This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science, it's the end of the world. So I'm setting up shop, got my banner unfurled. It says the scientist is in, I'm gonna sell my advice. Show them how to stop the robots with a simple device. I'll reverse global warming with a wave of my hand. And all it'll cost you is a couple of grand. 'Cause this week's science is coming your way. So everybody listen to what I say. I use the scientific method for all that it's worth, and I'll broadcast my opinion all over the earth. 'Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 I've got one disclaimer, and it shouldn't be news, that what I say may not represent your views, but I've done the calculations and I've got a plan. If you listen to the science, you may just better understand that we're not trying to threaten your philosophy. We're just trying to save the world from jeopardy. Jeopardy. And This Week in Science is coming your way. So everybody listen to everything we say. And if you use our method instead of rolling a die, we may rid the world of toxoplasma gondii. 'Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 I've got a laundry list of items I want to address, from stopping global hunger to dredging Loch Ness. I'm trying to promote more rational thought, and I'll try to answer any question you've got. But how can I ever see the changes I seek when I can only set up shop 1 hour a week? This Week in Science is coming your way. You better just listen to what we say. And if you learned anything from the words that we've said, then please just remember it's all in your head. 'Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in 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 Science.
And that does it for our show. The Animal Corner's over.
Yeah, I didn't want to have to do it again. I'm tired.
We've done our show. A wonderful 2-hour show tonight. The interview and the science. So much good stuff to discuss.
It's 61 degrees in my room.
Why is your room so cold?
I just turned on my space heater.
I don't know. So all the pictures I was just showing as the ending credits came out, those were all taken by Greg during his trip to Kerguelen Island near Antarctica. It's in the Antarctic area. I don't know if he actually made it to the Antarctic mainland. Somebody had asked that at one point, and I'm not sure. The lemur in the middle. Groucho Oz, you're funny. That's right. Where's Waldo? It was a lemur. Where's Waldo Lemur? My nose is sniffly. I'm waiting for it to be done being sniffly. I'm glad my room is not 61 degrees. Why are you so cold? Why is your house so cold?
I don't know.
Do you have a heater? What's going on? Do you have a blanket?
Putting on a vest.
There are some funny comments in the chat room tonight, you guys. I'm sorry I couldn't I wanted to reply to things, but then I wanted to keep the show rolling and I couldn't focus on everything tonight. My brain was not multitask so easily.
Now my headphones look like earmuffs.
Maybe they should be earmuffs. Earmuff headphones.
Those exist.
Fada, I contacted him and he's not available for a while. So maybe at some point down the road, I'm not sure. I might try. There are some other people I know who are doing similar stuff, so I might try them. But I did contact him and he was very gracious, but not able at this point in time. So we'll see. We'll see. Sniffle nose. Sniffle nose. Yeah, Ed. So he did go to UC Davis for grad school, and I knew him in grad school. We were kind of in, he was in animal behavior and I did physiology, but we were in kind of connected labs. So we hung out all the time. We taught together too. Which class? We taught. Did he teach physiology now? Yeah, maybe we both taught physiology together. I don't remember. I'm not remembering anymore. Yeah, things changed, Fada. Things changed. He couldn't do it. He couldn't do it. There you go. Bluetooth earmuff headphones. Did you see that?
No, I didn't yet.
Fex found you stuff. Bluetooth earmuff headphones for smartphones. Ooh,
Cute.
Somebody's texting me. Who texts me on Wednesday night at this
Who
late?
indeed?
It's my husband going, are you ready to go? Are you done yet? Oh, it's you.
It's me. I did it. I texted you.
Nice.
I remember to text you about things that I wanted to text you about before when you're in front of me. So then I just do it.
It makes sense. It does make sense. I sent both of you guys an email with the Maryland STEM Festival.
Oh yeah, I looked at it. We made the
we were in a picture.
the opening day picture. Woo!
Yeah, that's so fun.
Yeah, it's great. So we're in their summary that'll go on for this next year's and help them with their fundraising for the next year and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, they were very happy to have us. And he said, maybe they'll be able to get us back again someday.
That would be awesome.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I got an email this week. Where did that go? I hid it somewhere. Here we go. We have been, would we potentially be interested in, what is it, about the same time as was the Baltimore trip this last year, going and doing a TWIS show, a live tape of the show to the 2017 Entomological Society of America meeting.
Oh, I did see that email. Well, you guys know how I feel about it.
I think
Wait,
you
what
would
is
say
this?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just needed to ask before I could get back to everybody. And
Where is it?
Denver, Colorado.
Oh.
Can we do it on our way
Yay.
to or from Baltimore?
Right. Just we'll stop in Denver and have
Mini
another
twist tour.
right? That would be fun. A little layover. Denver.
When even was Baltimore? October?
Oh, November. It was the beginning of November. It was basically the same exact dates. It's basically the same date that this potential trip would be.
What is time?
So I was talking to my son today about the exoplanets and the fact that they're 40 light years away and how
Justin, can I say yes to this before you move on to the next subject? I really
it's the same subject. It's the same subject. I just want to interject it. And I was like, so, you know, I signed this up. It's going to be a multi-generational thing. And he's like, well, why don't we just do what they did in Futurama and find a way to change the speed of light so that we could all speed of light becomes like 10 times faster. And therefore, we could travel at the old speed of light, and that's how they get everywhere in Futurama, apparently.
Right.
So that's the bending of time thing that we could do both shows at once.
Got it.
I love the idea of going to this.
Yeah.
Cool.
Great. I'm down.
Awesome. Okay. I'll get back to her and let her know that I'll email back and say, very possibly, let's talk. That sounds cool. Denver would be awesome.
Yeah, we have to let them know this week.
I'm down to hang
Yeah,
out with
that's
some
why-
arthropod bros.
Yeah.
I was like, well, we have the show, so I'll be able to talk to you guys and we can decide if we can do it. But yeah, Entomological Society.
And it's Denver, which is awesome.
Yes.
That'd be cool.
Yes.
We could see Dave Friedel. Where's
That's
Dave?
true.
He's not in the chat room. He doesn't hang out in the chat room anymore.
We could go
Is
to
he
the
watching us?
Celestial Seasonings Factory.
Is he watching us on Facebook? We could go. I would enjoy that. I really do like my, what is it, peach passion and
Or we
What
could
is
go to
the
the
other
Naropa
one?
Institute
Bengal
in
spice.
Boulder,
I
the
enjoy
Jack
them.
Kerouac, for the, what is it? The Jack Kerouac Society for Disembodied Poets. What happened?
Oh.
That would be fun.
yeah.
I want to go to the Denver Zoo. Shocking.
Go to the Denver Zoo.
It's a really good zoo, supposedly.
I could see some insects.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds fun. Could live tape a show and tell some of the stories behind lesser known entomologists and or entomology fields.
Yeah, that'd be some fun interviews.
I bet there's some invertebrate sex to be had.
Oh my goodness. It could be, you know, what stays in Denver or happens, whatever.
This is the beauty of me being on the ground floor of my new spot, is I can do this.
You're not bothering anybody bouncing over their heads. Yeah. Things do bounce a little bit though.
They do. That's okay. It adds to the effect.
Wiz Mike says, I tell my sister to stay away from biologists. What?
How dare you? She should be a biologist.
Yeah, or an
What then?
astrobiologist. How about an astrobiologist?
Yeah, what then with Mike? Huh?
Yeah, Space Identity 4. It's going to be beginning of November. We will give plenty of warning. November 5th through 8th is when this meeting is taking place. So,
This year? Oh, wow. Oh, I get it. How it could overlap now with the other thing that we want to do.
And that's why she
If
needs
we
to
get
know
invited
now.
again, if we get
This
invited
is-
again to Baltimore, but this will be cool.
This is a shorter flight.
That
is.
it is.
It's a shorter flight. It would be.
Or it
No
could
passenger.
be a
No,
stopover
no,
on
no.
the way to or from
It
Baltimore.
could be. Wouldn't that be crazy?
Just
Like,
saying.
get a bus.
TWIS Tour 2017.
Drive there. Yeah.
I'm interested. Or we could get a van, and then everyone, all of the families can come
We could drive to Colorado, all of us
Yeah.
in the van.
in a giant bus, in a giant tour bus. Cheaper than a hotel, baby.
Oh,
Maybe.
funny.
Maybe. Yeah.
Maybe. Take the train. All of us take the train.
Actually, the train would be really nice. That could
Yeah.
be a very fun train ride.
Yeah, absolutely. And then everyone could come. You
That
guys
would be
can
fun.
pull your kids out of school for like 3 weeks, right?
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Totally.
Yeah.
That'd be fun.
School schmool. Yeah. Road trip.
It'd be fun.
Actually, I'd have a hard time. My kids, I have tried to pull my kids out of school just for a day. They won't have it.
Yeah.
My kids are
Aw.
so brainwashed into educating themselves at
Aw.
school that like none of them will ever take a day off of school. Even my 3-year-old is like, no, I gotta go. I got an important hangout meeting on the slide with my compatriots. Like none of them will skip school to even go see
Yeah.
like a movie with me.
Yeah.
Totally
Yeah.
irritating.
Yeah.
I prayed every morning that there'd be a reason to pull me out of school that day, which is, explains a lot of what's happened since in my life.
I
But-
went to school so sick that multiple times I went to school so sick that I fainted at
Wow.
school because I was afraid of missing tests or stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's all in high school.
That's how my kids are. No, even like
Yeah.
in earlier school, that's how my kids are. They like my daughter was sick from school the other day, and we had to go to school anyway at the end to get all of her assignments.
Yeah.
We had to go and like get her like, what did we do today? What'd you cover today? What's the homework? I gotta have it so I can be on top of it. Like, wow.
Yeah.
Kids today.
Yeah. But in the meantime, just so you guys know, I already have 130 hours of vacation time accrued. So
You have
Yes.
130 hours?
yeah.
All right. Great.
Already this early in the year?
It rolls
Leftover.
over. It
You have
rolls over.
rollover. I have no rollover. And
Rollover.
they roll back at my work.
Yeah, they're
Rollover.
like, oh, you didn't use it? Say goodbye.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the worst.
Yeah.
No,
I mean, mine will top out.
They give you a cash
They
payout.
give you the money, the payout.
I wouldn't
but-
mind that actually. That sounds great.
But then you're down to zero
It also
vacation
means
days.
that you
Yeah.
don't get to go anywhere doing
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
It means that you have to stay there all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
18 years, you only missed 2 sick days, Hot Rod? Wow. That's amazing. I'm sick all the time.
Yeah, but you
Yeah.
can't call in sick at your job.
Yeah. No, I don't get to call in sick. So, like everybody to appreciate the
That's a lot of
non-symmetrical
vodka.
nature of this cup. I don't know if you can really
Oh,
really-
yeah. Did it
See
go
how-
through the dishwasher when it wasn't supposed to?
acrylic glasses don't do so well on the hot setting
Yeah.
of the dishwasher. It's now it is now like there's kind of like different I like this side for drinking out of now. It's more of the
Is it
pouring
safe to drink
side.
out of
Sure.
We'll find out. It's
Mhm.
science.
Hot dishwashers, man. Acrylic cups, they just can't handle the heat. Can't take it. It is modern art glass now, exactly. It is. I like it. Marshall was like, "We should throw these out. They're all warped." And I was like, "I know. I love them."
Aw.
And I was like, "I'm keeping these. I'm going to put more glasses in the dishwasher now. I'm going to put it on the hot setting, do it more, see what kind of sculptures come out."
How fun. Oh, you guys, look what I won from a claw machine this week. It's a rainbow alligator.
Wow. Actually, more
So-
impressive than the alligator is the fact that you actually got something out of a claw machine.
I did on the first try.
I did that once where I bragged that I could get that I always win at those things, and then I put in the coins and I actually got something, and it was the first time, and I think the last time. This is the only time it ever worked, but because I bragged about it right before I tried it, it made me look like a boss. And I've tried the same maneuver multiple times, and it always ends in failure. But that one time, it was a real stunning event.
That's impressive. I was watching all these
Not really.
dudes putting money into the Keymaster trying to get the iPad, and they were just failing and failing and failing. And I was like, I'm going to use this claw machine. And then
That's awesome.
I got my sparkly alligator. And meanwhile, they each spent at least $8 on the stupid Keymaster and didn't get the iPad. And then I went home and YouTubed it, and it turns out it's rigged.
Huh.
So there's that.
It's rigged. But I got my sparkly alligator.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. All right, you guys. Is there anything else we need to go over? Show-wise,
No.
business-wise?
No. If you want to respond to my text,
I will respond to your text.
read.
Oh my goodness.
That's
I spent too much time on the internets today. I need to take some time
no.
off the internet and just kind of
No.
read books and things.
I was reading the internet yesterday and then saw this, Endangered Species Act might go bye-bye. And I went, time to close the laptop.
It's like I look and I'm like, and I'm upset about that, and I'm upset about that,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
upset. I'm going to tell people how I think about that, and I got to talk about that, and I'm upset. I'm like, wow, okay. I need to.
Yep.
Like,
yeah.
today-
With the
today
Endangered
was-
Species Act thing, I tried to actually find a quote that said that the Endangered Species Act would go away. That
Yeah,
said
could you?
that somebody wanted to abolish the Endangered Species Act. I couldn't find it.
Oh.
Because if I could find it, that's something I would talk about on the show. But what happened was there have been conversations about species that were considered nuisance animals at one time, like the Mexican gray wolf, and then
Uh-huh.
were put on the Endangered Species Act that are now,
list,
there's
yeah.
conversations about taking them back off, which is bad, but they're conversations. They're not even proposed like bills or anything, amendments. None of this has actually happened. Just conversations have happened, which is not good, but it's still nothing that I feel like I can, yell from rooftops about at this point. But so then that happened, and that caused people to go, the Endangered Species Act is going to go away.
I
And,
got really upset. Yeah.
and I was very mad, but I couldn't actually find a source. And so I decided, okay, step away, close the computer. Okay, but think about, like, I spent a half an hour trying to find a source. Couldn't find one. Think about how many people are reading these articles
So there
and aren't looking.
Okay, so here's an article, Washington Post.
Yes, that was one of the ones I was looking at.
Yeah, it is not that they are going to repeal it, but they just had a hearing to, quote, modernize the
Mhm.
Endangered Species Act.
Mhm.
And part of this was led by Senator John Barrasso. His focus in a bid to change the act would be, quote, eliminating a lot of the red tape and the bureaucratic burdens that have been impacting our ability to create jobs.
Yes, so that's not great because
No, and
that's pretty clearly what it's clear what that means, but there's not specific verbiage saying what that means yet.
Yeah. House Natural Resources Committee Chairman Rob Bishop of Utah said the Endangered Species Act has never been used for the rehabilitation of species. It's been used to control the land. We've missed the entire purpose of the Endangered Species Act. It has
that's
been
hilarious.
hijacked.
Okay.
Um,
Good.
It
Talk
basically,
about alternative facts there.
yeah,
Well done.
the take home is that the conservatives who are against it say its regulations prevent people from doing business and making a living.
Yes.
So that is the main. It's like, are we putting animals first or people? And that's going to be the discussion there.
Right, which is kind of silly because it's not an either or. You need healthy ecosystems for healthy humans, and to pretend you don't is it's silly.
Okay, so here's the logic. Listen to this part of the article. The logic is escaping me here. Okay, so I'm gonna read this to you, and just let me know if you're thinking what I'm thinking after you hear it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
In a comment to a former U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service director who testified at the hearing, Senator James Inhofe repeated a point made by Barrasso that of more than 1,600 species listed as threatened or endangered since the Act's inception, fewer than 50 have been removed. That's about 3% of the total, the chairman said. As a doctor, if I admit 100 patients to the hospital and only 3 recover enough to be discharged, I would deserve to lose my medical license.
That's not how that works. Come on with this.
So basically, because not
Inhofe
enough
also-
animals have been taken off the Endangered Species Act, the whole thing's not working, and more people need to be able to do it.
Inhofe is also the senator who said the internet is a series of
I know.
tubes.
I know.
He's the
he's
same
brilliant.
idiot.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
He's
same
brilliant.
mind.
This is so dumb. That's like saying, okay, then we just won't put any sick people in the hospital. If I'm gonna follow your logic, okay, so we should just leave them all to die outside of the hospital, not being treated.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah. The logic there is just like
This is just another case of removing what we have without replacing it with something new. With the healthcare, with everything else, it's let's mess with what exists without offering an alternative or a replacement.
So let me give. I think I already did this rant last week, but federal laws and all these things are largely minimums. They're not actually technically the maximum of regulation. They're minimums of regulation, and then each state puts its layer of regulation upon that, where they can, which is of course enforcing it higher, have a higher standard, have more protection, and then you could run into a county in the state's protection for a particular species or particular regulation, the control on emissions or water or whatever it is, and the city can even do a higher. You can think of building codes, right? The federal government might say everybody can build their house out of straw, and then one state must say, actually, we're going to make sure everybody, this is the Three Little Pigs, by the way.
Right, yes.
Everybody has to build sticks. Straw isn't a good enough standard. And then your county might say, no, sticks is good for the state maybe, but here locally it has to be bricks. Yeah. And then it's the city of San Francisco, and they go, yeah, okay, it can be bricks, but it has to be earthquake reinforced so that it can withstand tremors. Like, so all of this fear that we have at this dismantling of federal regulation is going to mostly affect states in which a particular hue of color on an electoral map might be represented. You're largely going to see everything being unchanged in California. One of the things I thought that was very interesting is they're talking about, again, it's just the conversation, but that's what leads to legislation. And really quickly in this administration, or the attempts to create legislation through it, of dialing back requirements for the auto industry. Now, one of the even if they do this, even if this succeeds, the state of California which has a higher than the federal requirements for emissions and is immediately adopted by, I think it's 13 other states. And in fact, it's going to be very difficult for the auto industry to make that change when California, who is the biggest dealer or buyer of automobiles, doesn't subscribe to it. And there was an age where we had already where the federal, well, actually the car industry itself had sort of stepped up to California standards over time anyway, because it made it easier just to build the cars one way for the California standard and then sell them everywhere. Because I've experienced it where somebody who had bought a car that was delivered to Colorado actually had moved to California and their car could not be smogged. Their car could not legally be on the road in California. So what do? Now you're out your vehicle. You can't drive your vehicle. You can't register your vehicle in the state. You have to get rid of it. You have to change vehicles just for and it was such a mess that the auto industry largely is going to adapt what California does anyway, because we're such, and the other 13 states are pretty, New York is one of them, very high population, large amounts of cars being purchased. It actually probably costs them money to reduce the standards. Now, in terms of the goals of efficiency, if California takes up that percentage of cars, that if California just takes up the mantle of what was being presented in terms of what the industry has to produce in terms of efficient vehicles, you see that reflected nationally, because you cannot disregard California's requirements and emissions and still have a healthy functioning auto industry in the United States. It's impossible. Things that there are checks, there are big checks. One of the big checks on these is California. If for instance, one of these states that has state regulation that's been wanting, say, lower agricultural standards, actually initiates this, state like California, state like New York could say, okay, you no longer meet the standards that we require for our food supply, and therefore you can't sell your goods here. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that can be done at the state level, to actually control and impact these attempts at dialing back federal.
Well, unfortunately, the Endangered Species Act is not one. So because
animals don't necessarily stay in one place, many animals cross state lines, and so when you have animals that traverse through Wyoming, Montana, Colorado, all of a sudden you have something that either needs multiple states to work together and multiple state agencies to work together, or hey, let's have this federal regulation that kind of manages the whole thing from the outset. So there for animals, there are
California if it can get shot down when it flies over Nevada.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, it's the states' rights things is if at some stages it doesn't make sense, it doesn't work.
I mean, they seem to keep forgetting that
regulation.
Yeah, absolutely. And nowhere, I just think it's so ridiculous, because these people who are very into their identity as Americans and the symbols of America and all this kind of stuff, right? The bald eagle is one of the animals that was taken off of the endangered species list because it worked and because federal funding helped bald eagle breeding programs and paid for research that found out what was wrong with bald eagles and made hunting birds of prey illegal. That's why our national bird is not extinct.
Yeah. There's one of the previous directors. What is it? Hold on one second. Let me make sure I know who she is. A recent director of Fish and Wildlife, or this is a man, Daniel Ash. He's now the Association of Zoos and Aquariums chief executive. Was at one point a director of Fish and Wildlife.
I saw him speak this year.
Yeah, he said to this panel, the Endangered Species Act is the world's gold standard for government conservation. It's not perfect, it can be better. Your goal is to make it stronger and better. And then another, what was it? And then additionally, so this is a gold standard for basically the world for government conservation. And then another director said, in the years that states were less engaged previously in managing their own animal numbers, the total number of mammals, birds, reptiles, and amphibians, among others, have declined by half. So the federal regulation of the Endangered Species Act makes a difference.
Absolutely. And other countries have actually modeled their endangered species programs on ours. So it's something that's been around for around 100 years now, I think. And well, okay,
And
so
maybe
the idea
it does
of
need
endangered
modernization.
species.
You know, maybe it does need modernization. Maybe there are, as it's changed, maybe there are species-specific concerns. Maybe there are new concerns because of encroaching urbanization. Maybe there are, various things that need to be brought into the Endangered Species Act that are not currently considered. Maybe there's certain tweaking that needs to happen.
Right.
Nobody's saying that doesn't need to happen, but
I would say it would be in the side of more protection, not less.
more, yeah.
So
Exactly.
yeah, the Endangered Species Act itself, I think it was 75 or 76, 1975, 1976, somewhere in there, was founded. But Theodore Roosevelt, I think, was one of the very first to talk about protecting species and government protections of species and species space, and talking about, in what endangered means and that kind of stuff. So it's not a new idea. It's been working. Perhaps it could work better, but again, it's saved species. It has literally saved species. To throw that away seems very silly, and especially when they're outright going to say it's about job creation. Well, how about the fact that I have several friends that work in environmental impact surveys because of endangered species, and their jobs would go away if the Endangered Species Act went away.
The right way, so it doesn't matter.
Right, but there's still jobs.
But it's not the right
so
jobs.
That's
many
not
jobs.
what matters.
There's
That's
so
not what, this
many
is
jobs
politics. This
relating
this
to
isn't logic.
Of course not. But I just want to battle it with some of my logic because that's all I have.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
Logic.
Is logic and facts.
Logic.
Those are
Well,
my
if
weapons.
history has taught us anything,
Logic.
and it may not. History does not repeat itself, but it often rhymes, as Mark Twain once said. You're gonna see a rollback of regulation under this administration, and you're gonna see pain inflicted on the environment and on people, and there'll be a backlash from that, and then we'll go the other way, and the adults will take over again and put the house back in order, and then after some level of complacency, like, hey, why is all this stuff like, wait, why don't we just cut through this mess of all these rules that we have and just try to do things like the Old West? And then it'll be a severe amount of pain. It's like, this is a cycle. And this is old too. Like, there's that experiment. I can't remember what it's called, but it's with the prisoners. And
The Stanford prison experiment?
And the more like sort of lax and friendly they were to the prisoners, the more the prisoners sort of took advantage of the laxness. And then there was almost always in every version of this experiment a very authoritative blowback on that the consensus to how to fix things was to become very authoritarian again. And after a while of that, people got sick of it and it went back to the, I mean, somebody was saying like, oh gosh, under the Obama 8 years, we lost 60, the Democrats lost 60 seats and 13 governorships and everything's got, so this is like the worst leadership but actually over the last 10 administrations, he's right in the middle. Because after every administration has had control for a while, there's a blowback the other direction that says, no, we got to do things completely different, because there's always a large percentage of our population that is in need of change. There's always a large percentage, and I think this has largely to do with wealth inequality, but there's a large portion of our population that isn't seeing the advantages, or doesn't feel that they're part of the advantages of being in this society as it's moving forward, and seeks change in hopes that that will bring forth some more advantage or something. And I think largely you could probably put that towards the wealth inequality of our country and how drastic it is that there's so many of us that are always seeking a change to better our lives because we feel like we don't have a comfortable situation. But this is why I think this cycle always happens. Whoever's in charge didn't fix it, so let's go on and try something else.
Try something new. Yeah. Throw it all out. Try something new. Speaking of not being comfortable and trying something new, there are reports of some guy in UC Berkeley depositing body lice in buildings across the campus. Disposing of body lice.
I mean, disposing.
Disposing of body lice.
Planting or disposing? Spreading or tossing out into a bin?
Let's see.
Good question.
Disposing
I
sounds
guess
like get away with.
Here's disposing of them. Yes. He will take a handful of paper towels and a trash bin into a restroom stall. And then there he will wipe off countless body lice, depositing the towels and live insects in the bin. He's taking advantage of changing the situation.
It's like he's like putting his toe in the water of a Dr. Evil. Like, Ew,
you guys want to see a
No,
video of...
no, I can't. I'm sorry. I will leave right now if you start playing that. I am too squeamish. I won't sleep at all.
You don't want to see a video of lice?
No, I do not.
No, you're like, no.
There's some things I can handle and some things that are just beyond.
Oh my goodness.
I've had like somewhat sort of less sinister fantasies of what this guy has actuated. Like,
he's probably just a guy. Yeah.
I had this fantasy of creating like a massive ladybug farm and just like dedicating an entire backyard to like farming and raising ladybugs. Just
that would be cool.
Like that would be a pretty cool one. Of course, I've also heard that if in large quantities they bite and can actually, but I've never experienced
ladybugs.
That, so. Yeah, I've heard this, but I've had ladybugs crawling on me. I've never been bitten, so I don't understand what that. And they don't stay, which is also part of the thing about ladybugs. Like you can raise ladybugs, but they're going to leave you. They have like wherever they're born, they're programmed to leave there. They're programmed to go seek out somewhere else to forage. Yeah. So you can't like create a ladybug community.
No, because they want to go someplace else. Yes.
They're programmed to like take off and try. They're explorers by nature. So you can't. And then so maybe it would be all for naught. But that'd be sort of a fun project. I got one of those. I've done the ladybug farm thing twice. Once we raised them and we released them and it was fine. And the other time, right as they were becoming ladybugs, the thing got knocked over. And then there was like ladybugs in the house for weeks.
That'd be kind of fun. You're finding the ladybugs.
Like, you sort of rescue them when you find them and put them outside. But
you guys have itchy.
Ladybugs made you itchy? What?
No. Thinking about the
body life. Yeah. Now I'm scratching all over now.
If you're going to UC Berkeley, maybe don't sit in any of the chairs. Just kind of be careful about where you place yourself. Yeah.
Oh no. Now Blair's scratching. You're scratching your hair. That's hair lice. That's different than body lice.
Different body
Same,
lice.
same difference. Maybe they're just all having a party on my scalp. They're like, "Hey, body lice, come up and party with us."
Let's have a party. We're gonna head to the top.
You guys
go to Google.
Go to Google and play its little Google movie. It's super cute.
It's
Oh
about the
yeah,
planets,
it's about
right?
the exoplanets. It's really cute. Yeah.
Yeah.
They do some cute things every once in a while. I do enjoy the Google Doodle. I certainly do.
All right, friends, is it time for bed?
It is. We got on another. I was going to go to bed, and then we got on a jag, which was good.
Oh, which reminds
But everyone
me,
out there,
in the show notes, at the end of the show notes, I put a link in there.
and you're going to put it in the next week's show.
No. But I want you both to take a look at it, and
Okay.
maybe we can talk about it in the after of next week's show. It's actually scientists writing about how to deal with fake news in science.
Oh.
Strategies for dealing with.
I don't see it. Oh,
It's
okay.
at the end of the show, after the end of the show.
Oh, I see it. Okay. Yep. Scroll down. Okay, got it.
Yeah. Peruse that. Tell me what you think. If we could adopt some of this idea, or if it's
Yeah. Love it.
I also found an awesome invertebrate sex story right before the show, so I'm going to use that next week.
Like that. Oh, good teasers, you guys. All right, everybody out there. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for watching tonight. Thank you for hanging out.
We'll see y'all in
And-
March.
Yeah, next week.
Is next week March already?
Yep.
March already.
Oh, it's the
Because
little
it's
month.
February.
No,
That's
it's the baby
right.
month. Who's a cute little month? Who's a cute little month? You're a cute little month, February. You're a cute little month. Oh.
Oh,
What
facts.
is
Bed bugs.
time?
What is this thing called time?
What even is time?
Time.
Time makes fools of us all.
Time heals all wounds, and it also wounds all heals.
Is time relative or just nothing at all?
Time is not my relative. I mean, I know my cousins. I know my
What
It's not my relative. No.
Is time?
All right, I'm tripping out a little too hard. All right, y'all. Good night. See you next week. And
Oh, Blair. All right, everybody. Good night. Thank you so much. Good night, Kiki.
Good night, Blair.
We hope you all join us again next week. Thank you.